When a person finally decides to become unstoppable, the world does not applaud. It does not roll out a red carpet, nor does it bend itself to make the journey easier. Instead, the world pauses for a moment, almost silently, as if trying to understand whether you are serious this time, whether you are truly ready to rise above the hesitation, the doubts, the excuses, the waiting. It watches to see if this is just another moment of fleeting motivation, or the beginning of a transformation that can no longer be reversed. Because the moment you decide to become unstoppable, something inside you shifts in a way that cannot be undone. A slow, powerful, inner ignition begins to burn. And once it starts, everything changes. Most people never reach this point. They live in the shadow of their own potential, tiptoeing around their goals as if greatness were a fragile thing that might break if touched too firmly. They allow time to slip through their hands like water, hoping that clarity, courage, and certainty will somehow appear on their doorstep. But nothing in this world arrives uninvited. Success does not knock. It waits to be summoned. Purpose does not reveal itself. It responds to the one who dares to ask powerful questions. And life does not transform because you wish it would. It transforms because you demand it to. There comes a day when you look in the mirror and realize that the person staring back at you is not waiting for a miracle. They are waiting for you. Waiting for you to stop shrinking. Waiting for you to stop apologizing for wanting more. Waiting for you to stop bargaining with your potential. Waiting for you to step into the power that has always been there but has been buried under fear, comfort, and the opinions of people who never had the courage to chase their own dreams. This is the moment the unstoppable version of you is born. Not when conditions are perfect, not when the timing is ideal, not when everything finally makes sense, but when you decide, with full conviction, that you will no longer negotiate with your own greatness. Every person who has changed the world reached this moment. Edison reached it after thousands of failed attempts in the dark. Ford reached it when the world laughed at the idea of a motor car for the masses. Carnegie reached it as a poor immigrant boy who refused to let circumstance define his destiny. Disney reached it after being fired from a newspaper for lack of creativity. Lincoln reached it after defeat, heartbreak after heartbreak. None of them had an easy road, but each had a decisive moment when they said, asterisk enough. This is who I will become, and nothing will stop me. Asterisk, and that is what you must say to yourself now, not quietly, not timidly, not as a wish, but as a declaration carved into the walls of your mind. You must decide that you are done waiting for permission, done living smaller than you know you can, done letting fear masquerade as strategy, done seeking guarantees in a world that rewards the bold, not the hesitant. Because the truth is simple, the moment you commit fully, life responds differently. Doors appear where there were only walls. Opportunities emerge from places you never noticed. People begin to take you seriously because you finally take yourself seriously. Your energy shifts, your presence sharpens, your purpose begins to pulse through every thought, every action, every step forward, and this shift is not magic. It is alignment. It is what happens when your mind, your intention, and your actions finally aim in the same direction. But to reach this point, you must confront the first and greatest battlefield, your mind. Every victory you will ever experience begins here. Every achievement starts as a thought, a seed, a spark. Napoleon Hill wrote that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Most people only conceive, they never believe. They can see the dream but cannot see themselves inside it. They want the result but resist the identity required to create it. They cling to who they have been, even when it conflicts with who they want to become. Becoming unstoppable requires a different kind of thinking. It requires you to reject the mental patterns that have kept you average, comfortable, or conflicted. It requires you to stop asking whether you are ready and start asking whether you are willing. Willing to outgrow the habits that dim your spirit. Willing to let go of the people who do not support your. When you live with this level of intention, you begin to understand that obstacles are not punishments. They are invitations. Invitations to think deeper, grow stronger, and sharpen the inner tools required to sustain the success you are building. Challenges become mirrors, reflecting where you must rise, where you must evolve, and where you must strengthen the foundation of the person you are becoming. The unstoppable do not run from obstacles. They study them, outthink them, and break through them with a level of resilience that confuses ordinary minds. Most people see adversity as a sign to retreat. The unstoppable see it as a sign to advance. Adversity is the training ground of greatness. It is the pressure that shapes character, the friction that builds power, the resistance that forms strength. Without challenge, potential remains dormant. Without struggle, purpose remains shallow. Without tests, mastery cannot exist. Just as steel is forged in fire, human greatness is forged in moments where giving up would be easier, but rising is the only acceptable option. This is why every person who has accomplished something extraordinary speaks of hardship with a certain reverence. Carnegie faced poverty so deep it could have crushed his spirit, yet he used it as fuel. Ford faced rejection from investors who mocked his ideas, yet he persisted until the world bent to his vision. Lincoln faced losses so painful they would have shattered weaker men, yet he transformed his suffering into leadership that outlived him by centuries. Their struggles were not detours, they were prerequisites. and the struggles you face now are shaping you in the same way, preparing you for a future your present self cannot yet comprehend. But to navigate these challenges, you must cultivate clarity. One of the most powerful truths in life is that people do not fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack direction. A scattered mind cannot create a focused life. When your vision is blurred, your actions become inconsistent. When your purpose is unclear, your discipline becomes fragile. When you do not know what you truly want, everything feels urgent, yet nothing feels meaningful. Clarity is the compass of the unstoppable. It is what gives meaning to your effort and structure to your ambition. It is what transforms random motion into precise action. The clearer your intention, the more powerful your execution. When you know exactly what you are building, every day becomes a brick placed with purpose. Every decision becomes a doorway. Every setback becomes a stepping stone. And clarity does not come from waiting. It comes from questioning, reflecting, and deciding. It comes from sitting with yourself long enough to hear the voice beneath the noise. It comes from asking the difficult questions most people avoid. Who am I becoming? What do I truly want? What am I willing to sacrifice? What habits must I bury? And what habits must I build? What is the future I refuse to leave unlived? When you answer these questions honestly, you begin to see your life with new eyes. You begin to feel the difference between goals that excite your ego and goals that ignite your soul. You begin to distinguish between desires you inherited from others and desires that belong to you. And once you discover the goals that belong to you, the ones that resonate at the deepest level of your being, discipline becomes a natural extension of your identity. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is choosing what you want most over what you want now. It is honoring your vision in moments where comfort tries to seduce you. It is the bridge between intention and transformation. And discipline is not something you try to build. It is something you become. It is a mindset, a posture, a way of standing inside your own life with an unshakable commitment to your evolution. The unstoppable are not defined by motivation. They are defined by discipline. Motivation rises and falls, but discipline stands steady. Motivation depends on emotion, but discipline depends on decision. And the person who can act independent of emotion, who can execute on days of doubt, fatigue, uncertainty, and frustration becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Because nothing can break the person who refuses to break themselves. Your habits reveal your identity. Your actions reveal your priorities. Your consistency reveals. They understand that every hardship contains a hidden assignment, and those who accept that assignment rise into levels of strength they never imagined they could possess. Resilience is not a trait you are born with. It is a capacity you build, brick by brick, challenge by challenge. It is earned through nights when doubt sits on your chest like a weight, through mornings when your goals feel distant, through seasons where progress seems invisible. But in those seasons, something extraordinary is forming under the surface: an inner fortitude, a deeper belief, a stronger foundation. The unstoppable become unstoppable because they remain faithful to the process, even when the results are not yet visible. And this resilience feeds another force. Belief, not surface-level belief. Not the kind you repeat only when life is smooth, but the kind of belief that becomes the bedrock of your identity. It is the belief that whispers, "I was built for this," when circumstances try to convince you otherwise. It is the belief that keeps your vision alive in the dark, the belief that keeps your momentum alive in the slow seasons, the belief that keeps your mission alive when the world doubts your direction. Belief is the inner architecture of success. It shapes the thoughts that shape the decisions, that shape the behaviors, that shape your destiny. Napoleon Hill wrote about belief not as a concept but as a power, a living force, capable of altering the trajectory of a person's life. Belief is the lens through which you interpret possibility. When it is weak, every small obstacle feels like a mountain. But when belief is strong, even mountains feel like stepping stones. Think of the individuals who turned impossible dreams into reality. They were not the ones who had everything figured out. They were the ones who believed deeply enough to begin. Belief moved Edison through thousands of failed experiments. Belief pushed Ford to defy the industrial norms of his era. Belief carried Lincoln through personal and political tragedies. Belief drove Disney to build worlds no one else could see. They believed in something greater than their circumstances, greater than their fears, greater than the opinions that tried to cage their imagination. And now it is your turn. Your life will expand to the size of your beliefs, or it will shrink to the limits of your doubts. Every breakthrough starts with the internal decision to expect more from yourself, to believe that you are worthy of the life you envision, to believe that the ideas planted in your mind are not random, they are invitations, to believe that the challenges you face are not punishments, they are preparation, to believe that your future is not defined by your past, it is defined by who you choose to become today. But belief alone is not enough. It must be paired with vision, not a vague hope, not a blurry desire, but a vision so vivid that you can feel it in your bones. Vision is the mechanism through which the unseen becomes inevitable. It is what transforms your mind into a blueprint and your effort into architecture. A powerful vision changes the way you walk, the way you think, the way you speak, the way you decide. It becomes the gravitational force pulling your future into the present. Vision is what allowed the giants of history to see what others could not. Carnegie saw steel empires when others saw only dirt and sweat. Ford saw a world on wheels when others saw horses as the only future. Edison saw the light inside the filament long before it glowed. Disney saw castles rising from swampland. They were not driven by circumstance, they were driven by vision. And vision is what will drive you into the life you are meant to live. But vision is useless without action. The world is full of dreamers who never dared to move. The unstoppable are different. They combine vision with relentless execution. They show up when they do not feel like it. They take steps when the path is unclear. They make decisions before they feel prepared. They understand that progress does not come from perfection, it comes from movement. Action is the currency of transformation. Every step you take is a vote for your future. Every sacrifice is a seed. Every disciplined choice is a brick in the foundation of the life you are building. And action requires courage. Not the loud kind that shouts, but the quiet kind that endures. Courage is often invisible. It is found in the person who wakes up early to work on a dream no one else believes in yet. It is found in the person who leaves a comfort zone that has become a cage. It is found in the person who chooses self-respect. And when you begin stepping into this new life, something powerful happens. Your old patterns begin to crack. The limitations you once accepted start to feel foreign, almost incompatible with the identity you're growing into. The doubts that used to paralyze you lose their authority. The fears that once dictated your choices begin to shrink beneath the weight of your new mindset. You start to see clearly that the cage you lived in was never built by circumstance, it was built by perspective. And the moment your perspective expands, the walls fall. This is when the unstoppable version of you begins to fully awaken. You start making choices that align with your highest potential rather than your temporary emotions. You stop seeking validation and begin seeking growth. You stop chasing comfort and begin chasing character. You understand that greatness is not something you stumble into. It is something you sculpt intentionally, deliberately, and relentlessly. And as you sculpt yourself into someone disciplined, resilient, and driven, you begin to unlock parts of your mind that were dormant for years. You tap into creativity you didn't know you had. You access intelligence you never believed was within you. You discover depths of strength that were once buried under layers of hesitation. You begin to think like a creator, not a consumer. You begin to anticipate possibilities rather than fear consequences. You begin to see obstacles through a strategic lens instead of an emotional one. And most importantly, you begin to understand that your life is not limited by your resources, your life is limited by your resourcefulness. Look at the lives of every great figure who changed the trajectory of history. They were not born with advantages, they created advantages. They were not granted certainty, they forged certainty through decision. They were not handed opportunities, they extracted opportunities from the very circumstances others ran from. Their power did not come from luck, it came from the mental machinery they built. Belief, purpose, discipline, clarity, vision, gratitude, resilience, adaptability, and relentless action. This machinery exists within you as well. It is not reserved for the exceptional. It is what makes a person exceptional. The difference between those who succeed and those who do not is not fat, it is whether or not they activate the machinery of their own potential. And the moment you decide to become unstoppable, this machinery begins roaring to life. But even as this transformation unfolds, there is an element that separates the extraordinary from the merely ambitious: the willingness to evolve. Growth is not a straight line. It requires shedding habits that no longer serve you, shedding identities that conflict with your highest potential, shedding relationships, mindsets, and behaviors that were tolerable for who you once were but are lethal to who you are becoming. Evolution is painful because it demands honesty. It requires you to confront your shortcomings without shame, to examine your excuses without denial, to face your fears without retreat. But most people never do this. They cling to old versions of themselves because change feels like loss. But what they fail to see is that the only thing they lose is the weight that kept them from rising. When you finally embrace evolution, the rising becomes natural. You feel lighter, clearer, more aligned. You stop resisting the flow of life and start directing it. Your mind opens like a lens coming into focus. Your intuition sharpens. Your decision-making strengthens. You begin navigating challenges with strategy instead of panic. You start embracing discomfort not as suffering but as sculpting. You begin to realize that every moment of discomfort is constructing your future capacity. And as your capacity expands, your world expands. Opportunities begin appearing where you once saw dead ends. You attract people who resonate with your growth, not your stagnation. You start to feel a quiet power, grounded confidence that does not depend on external applause. This confidence is different from arrogance.